everybody. I'll call the Planning Commission meeting to order here. I'm Chairperson Mayor Zach Kruink. We'll go around the room. Commissioners, if you could introduce yourselves.
Fran Aaron, Commission Member.
Shane Burkhart, Commission Member.
Todd Furkey, City Alderman.
Lee Town Commission Member.
Joe Terry, Secretary.
Adam Kagan, Community Development Director.
And I understand there's a sign-in sheet going around the room. We've got two alder persons also in the room, in addition to those, to Todd that's on the commission here. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Tom Real, Alderman, 4th District.
Scott Kellogg, Alderman, 3rd District.
All right, thank you very much. We'll move on to item number 1 on our agenda, which is the approval of the reports from the December 11, 2017 Planning Commission meeting. We have a motion to approve by Aaron. Is there a second? Second by Burkhart. Any discussion on or modifications to the reports? Alderperson Perkey?
So with the report with the community development, looking at the sale of produce in this residential area, that was not approved at the city council and is going to be discussed next council meeting. With the adaptations, or I guess what you would say, your input from the community development department, is that correspondence going to be the same as what we looked at, or is there some changes to that going to the council?
No, I am not putting together anything new to the council. They'll see the same information that the commission saw.
Okay. And that really didn't have anything to do with this, approving this, but I just wanted some information I should have asked before the meeting started.
On a point of order for the commission members to know that that's coming
Right.
through the council. It didn't pass. The recommendation of the planning commission was not accepted by the council, I guess is the point.
Right.
Okay, with motion and second to approve. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. Item 2, maps and plats received. There was a map received. Adam provided that to you in paper form here today. Adam, is there anything you want to speak to about that?
No, it's a fairly simple request. It's a CSM. It's within 1.5 miles of the city limits. It is not within the city of Wisconsin Rapids, so it is subject to our extraterritorial review. That being said, a preliminary version of this was reviewed by city staff, and there was no issues or concerns with it. So we would recommend approval of this particular CSM.
Is there a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion to approve.
A motion by Perkey. Is there a second?
Second that.
Second by Tao. Any discussion, commission members, on that? Seeing no discussion, moving to vote. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. Item 3, public hearing on Plan 171010, Aspires Riverview Hospital Association. The applicant is requesting amendment to an existing planned unit development PUD within the R2 1-family and 2-family residential district to add additional properties to allow the construction of a new ambulance garage at 432 Dewey Street. The original planned unit development contains the properties commonly known as 410 and 420 Dewey, 1041 and 1121 Hill Street, 810 4th Street South, and 811 and 921 3rd Street South. The amendment proposes to add the properties commonly known as 432 Dewey Street to the district. And as a note, this item was postponed at the December 11, 2017 meeting at the request by the applicant. So with that, I will open the public hearing. Anybody wishing to speak in favor of the request, I would allow them to speak in favor of the request first. Anyone wishing to speak in favor of the request? Adam,
I guess
you have
yes.
any comments? Yeah.
I guess I'll speak in favor of it on behalf, I'm the applicant for the hospital. My name is Jeff Olson. I'm the senior project manager for X9 Architects. We have developed a new concept design for the new transport ambulance garage, which will help support the care in the neighborhood. The location is such that services and the ambulance staff, the EMS staff that would service those ambulances to go out and bring and transport people either to the hospital or away, would have direct access to that. So this location is kind of in that nature for that direct access for them, whether that's a 24/7 operation for them, meaning those staff are on staff 24/7, or reduced staff. So location fits in that location based on the direct proximity of the hospital. And I think the letter and everything that was submitted kind of outlines the use and how it will be functioning. But open it up for any questions.
Thank Thank you, Adam, or anybody else wishing to speak?
I can provide an overview if that's
Sure.
acceptable to the commission. There's been some confusion on what exactly the hospital is requesting, so I just kind of wanted to clarify in hopes that everyone can get on the same page. So basically, there is an existing planned unit development for Aspire's Riverview Hospital. It incorporates basically the properties commonly known as the manor properties on the west. It includes the hospital, it includes their parking lots, basically, and the Beth Key building is currently all within the existing planned unit development. The request before you is to amend that planned unit development and to add the properties at 432 Dewey Street, that property being at the southeast corner of Dewey and Hill Street. And again, that amendment is being requested to add that property for the sake of adding the ambulance garage as outlined by Jeff. So although all the properties that are in the existing PUD were listed in the notice, they're listed on the agenda, there's no modification to the existing hospital properties. It's just, again, that addition of the ambulance garage, which is before the commission today. So the conditions of approval that are recommended by staff, for the most part, deal with the ambulance. However, staff did recommend a couple other conditions to clean up some other issues that have been an ongoing concern with the hospital. Specifically, there's the discussion on the long-term viability of Dewey Street as a public street, because over time it has been narrowed and it's been reduced in scale. So is it acting as a public street anymore, or is it acting as more of a private drive for the hospital? So we are asking that the hospital sit down with the city over the next 12 months, basically to just have a discussion on that. And then
Specific to the property, the street that's within their property.
Yeah, from
So
Third
not
Street
the entirety
to
of
Hill.
Dewey. I want to make just a clarification, so folks don't think it's the property that is not bounded by the hospital.
Correct, thank you. And then the other item that we're asking them to discuss with us over the next 12 months or so is there are some encroachment or overlap issues on the south side of the hospital along the Riverview Expressway, where there's some existing parking areas and things like that. So again, not really germane to the request of the ambulance garage, but since they're going through this amendment process, the city wanted to bring those items of concern forward. So with that, planning staff did recommend approval of this particular planned unit development request, subject to 7 conditions. And I can read those if the commission would.
Hopefully the clarification helps address the concerns related to the scope that might be out there, that this was, that the request is larger than what maybe people had previously thought. So I guess, are there any questions specific to what Adam had just said related to the scope or the 7 conditions that are outlined in the report? Yes, ma'am.
Does that clearly mean that the green space, as we're calling it, which is the property that goes up to Chestnut, is not in any way involved with the request that's being submitted on behalf of the hospital at this time?
Correct, that is, although it's part of the existing PUD, it is not being modified. The use is not being modified for that green space as part of this request.
The zoning will remain R.
The existing zoning is R2 with a planned unit development designation. That will not change as a result of this request.
So any future development would require a similar process to which the hospital is following here with the ambulance, with the addition of the properties on Dewey Street, or the construction of the ambulance garage, which was previously not agreed to or outlined in the PUD or approved by the city.
Correct. Yep, and the only thing I'll add to that is, obviously, as neighbors, you've noticed that there has been some clearance of that
Yes.
site right now. That is only for the purpose of a construction yard for a renovation project that is separate of this request. That's all internal modifications to the existing hospital itself. So you will see construction equipment there, you will see parking areas there, but again, that's not subject to this planned unit development request. And then that would be returned back to a green space after that construction project is done.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Excuse me.
Sure.
For future planning, phase 3, when do you think that will take place? And will the hospital be looking into acquiring more neighborhood or residential property for their needs. The neighborhood is very concerned about additional property being taken away by the hospital, and we think our neighborhood is a treasure. We're very concerned about plans down the road, and although it seems the hospital is housekeeping by requesting rezoning, according to the letter we received, we appreciate that you're going to insist on the hospital having to, in each case, apply to the commission and to the neighborhood for any expansion concerning the neighborhood. There was a resolution made in 2003, and we want the commission and the council, we want the hospital to be transparent. We feel as though the neighborhood cannot tolerate any more expansion into it without losing some of its wonderful qualities and what it contributes to the city of Wisconsin Rapids, which is a beautiful city. We have a beautiful neighborhood. Every town should what could we ask for except that we feel a little nervous about future expansion, and would you help me understand what phase 3 is going to be? They say for now there's not going to be any further plans concerning the neighborhood, but we feel very unsettled because not every agreement in that resolution of 2003 was abided by, and so I hope you understand our concern. And we're not trying to we want a beautiful, up-to-date, state-of-the-art hospital also. We all worked there for a lifetime, right around here. And so we're also concerned about the hospital. We're concerned about the economy in town, businesses coming in. I personally was appalled by Quick Trip, allowing Quick Trip to come in to residential property. I think when you think about it, it's an open door. You got a toll into the neighborhood. I feel sorry for the people around there who have considered this their home all this time. I love Quick Trip. I love their bananas and their onions, and they make them wonderful. You can go in there and get a good deal. But please consider, little by little, the commercial aspect coming down the hill on Dewey Street and meeting up with the hospital. Don't you see how that takes the integrity away from that beautiful area? We're nervous because we saw all of those homes and there were many of them, and I mean many, several blocks of homes that were either moved away to a new location or they were demolished. I remember looking out and seeing a beautiful home on the corner of Chestnut and 3rd Street, and that was Grandma and Grandpa Warzinski's home. I saw the wrecking ball come in and take down that home within a couple of hours. We don't want that to happen again, and we want you, and I think you do realize how precious that neighborhood is to the beauty of the city. It's very charming, but can't you see where they want, or the hospital, they want to, and they can see the potential in the neighborhood right around where we live, another couple blocks of homes being moved and demolished eventually. I won't live long enough to see it, but down the road, and how this affects the entire city, the beauty, the charm, you know what I'm trying to say? I have mixed feelings, because I want a good hospital. I want a state-of-the-art hospital. Where are they going to expand? They can't expand out on the expressway. They're trying now to go up the hill on Dewey. We also see the need for a garage for the ambulances. If it would have been up to us, we would have had the hospital go out on the perimeter of town and where they could expand all they wanted to and have this wonderful state-of-the-art facility. We all worked in very responsible jobs at the hospital. So you can see where we have mixed feelings. But for now, I think it's very important that we understand the needs, the future needs of a hospital. And they are going to need room. They either have to go up or go out. And going up is very expensive. But do you know what I wish I could, I had the ability to help you understand what we're feeling. We want the assurance of transparency to the neighborhood. We feel a little nervous because the resolution was not abided by exactly. Little by little, changes had been made in it, and can we trust them to keep their word this time? This is what we're concerned about. I'm sorry I'm taking so long to explain, but I hope you understand what I'm trying to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Sir?
I appreciate that. When I work at the mill, and when we're trying to attract new people, I'll drive them through that neighborhood just to show them what Wisconsin Rapids looks like, because it is an impressive neighborhood, and it's very nice homes. I don't know why those addresses that are the residential that I've heard now twice that are not in this plan are still in the paperwork that we're agreeing on, because many of us may not be here the next time the planning commission meets, and if those addresses that are on 4th Street and must be the old Warzinski home are on there, why can't those be stricken from that thing? So, because if it's in writing and it's agreed upon, the next group of people that comes in here just says, hey, it was agreed upon. That's I'm not.
So just for clarification purposes, the concern you have is the properties that are identified for the purposes of the PUD. The concern is that any approval activity today might give authority to do something on those properties. Is that a way of saying
I'm
your
not a
concern?
lawyer. It's
Yeah,
not legal.
okay.
But
And I had to ask
if I
the
saw a piece of
question.
paper that said something on 4th Street or a
Sure.
Chestnut Street address, and I'm the guy that, yeah, it's already approved, it's right here, it's for us.
Sure, okay. And I think just for quick clarity on my behalf, part of the reason why I wanted to read the letter of the person that couldn't be here today, why we started a minute late, was because I wanted to ask Adam the question, am I missing something here, right? I mean, I'll read it a lot to read here, and I'm like, am I missing something? But my quick read in this is there isn't anything changing aside from the 432 Dewey Street property. So the request is straightforward, so any subsequent requests will have to come before the city, and Adam can elaborate further on what those would be at future phases. And I think the answer to the question too is, maybe my response in the action portion, so I'm stepping a little bit out of form here normally for myself, but personally I would oppose any further taking of property in the neighborhood, right? For residential property for the purposes of commercial or hospital expansion. That's me individually. And this under action or request of the city, as I understand it, does not. Nor does it give any authority for future taking of property, and that'll still have to go through any approval channels necessary. But Adam, do you want to clarify if I didn't touch on anything further related to the PUD process?
Yeah, and I mean, I keep going round and round on how to describe this the best way, because it is a very confusing situation, and I think I actually talked to you after the meeting on Thursday. No, okay, it must have been another person with the same concern. But basically, the way it works again is there's the existing PUD. So, and to clarify what a planned unit development is there's basically a base zoning district for every property in the city. In this case, it's R2, 1-family and 2-family district is the underlying zoning district. And then a planned unit development basically layers on top of that, and it allows certain things to be permitted above and beyond what the base zoning allows. So what happened in 2003, what happened in 2007, what happened in 2013 as well, was basically that planned unit development was put in place and it has been amended in some form or another over the years. So that existing planned unit development includes all those properties that were listed in your notice. So in other words, that PUD exists already in that form. It includes the Warzinski home, it includes the manor property, it includes the hospital. And so that's why it had to be listed in the notice and the letter that went out, because that's the existing district. The request that they have is to add one property to that, which is again 432 Dewey Street, which is that southeast corner of Dewey and Hill. And the existing uses that have been approved, again, in those other years, 2007, 2003, 2013, those can remain, they can continue to operate, and only anything specifically called out in any approval of the commission and the council would be allowed. And the way the conditions are proposed, and I can read those if it would be helpful, are basically stating that the only additional use that would be allowed is the ambulance garage on that southeast corner of Dewey. So again, although all those other properties are listed in there, there's no modification. That's just because that's the existing district, and we're adding this new property to it.
Okay.
So does that help, or
For
no?
my non-legal mind, if it's an R1 or R2 on those corners, I don't know what they are.
Mhm.
Just because of this planned unit development, they can put a 11-story facility on that corner, even though it's zoned R2.
If they requested it.
If they have to get specific approval for any new construction
And who would be
outside
the-
of,
Who would be the approvers?
that would be this body and the city council. And it would require the same legal notice that they're going through right
Okay.
now. So all the neighbors would be notified if they wanted to build on
Yep.
that manor property.
So we could say, you know what, you'd be killing my house property by putting an 11-story
Right.
building right next
Yep,
to it.
that's-
Can't you find a better place to put it?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, and there would be a public hearing in the similar process, because anything would require a subsequent amendment. And I think that's Adam's way of saying, that's why the notice includes all the addresses and causes the unnecessary concern, unfortunately.
I mean,
because
we
of
appreciate the free park,
request.
let me tell you. Well, we understand
The
the
green
hospital,
space, yeah.
the hospital.
Yeah, so nothing changes their ability to do anything else with that
Okay.
property at this time. But that's the key, it's at this time, right? I mean, they haven't put a request in front of the city to do anything else with any of the other property at this point. Other comments for the sake of the public hearing?
Is it,
Scott?
I'm not sure if it's in favor or against, because I think we passed that phase, but I appreciate your comments that you made, so you did it very well.
Thank you.
The concern I had is the garage itself. It's a garage where the ambulances would back in. And we don't know what phase 3 is, for the hospital, and we don't know what's gonna go on that parking lot in the future. And you don't know what's gonna go opposite that. And I'm concerned that ambulances, it's a 24/7 ambulance service. Ambulances return at 2 o'clock in the morning, backing in. It seems that you could design, I mean, you got architects, that they could design a drive-through ambulance garage. So they drive forward through it, stay there, and then drive out if they have a call. But right now, you have 2 ambulances backing in. And it seems to me, again, you don't know what the new phase will be. You don't know what will happen on that parking lot in the future. They told us they don't know what phase 3 will be. So I'm saying, why not design it, if you're gonna put a garage in, design it so the noise pollution would be limited, rather than just backing in. I know there's the house next door where the ambulance people stay.
Staff.
But the thing is, again, that's the whole neighborhood I'm thinking of. And someone said we were at the meeting at the hospital, one said, well, it's a long expressway and there's noise there. So, what, let's add more noise, I mean, it seems like, why add more noise to it? And you see, I think the garage may go through with the commission, but why not design it for the future so that it's the idea that you limit the noise? And come back next month to the commission with a model that might be more appropriate, in my mind, for that neighborhood.
And that could be an appropriate condition the commission could consider in adding into the,
Yeah,
into
that's
the
what I'm
staff report. So
thinking.
thanks for the comment, Joe.
So I guess the question I have is, your assumption is that ambulances backing up always sounds an alarm.
Yes.
Is that, and maybe someone from the hospital can help me with that, is that an accurate assumption? Will an ambulance backing up always,
I think they can silence that, and in the case of a transport garage, which they're not gonna be responding to calls, they're just going to be transporting from our facility to other facilities, that they would be able to silence that backup alarm, if you will.
But rather than think, do we know? I mean,
Well,
I
we
appreciate-
could require
Make it a
that as a
condition.
condition.
Okay,
Yeah, we could.
Ambulances are equipped, the city's ambulances are equipped with silencers
okay.
when they back up. Ambulances are equipped with that feature that turn off in backing up.
All right.
Wish our taxi cab service in town would do that for those of us that always have to have
So-
taxi cabs backing out at 2 in the morning.
I
across the
would be
street.
more comfortable if we know that they can turn it off so people if they're backing in, it doesn't disturb the neighborhood. To me, it's a simple thing maybe we talk about, but in the long run, it's a quality of life for those that live around.
Thank you.
in addition to the noise, it's much safer to pull a vehicle in forward and then come back out. I mean, I designed a pole shed at my old house. I could pull through it just for that fact.
Yeah.
And if you're gonna be doing that continuously, you're gonna end up hitting something, running something over, or if a kid's playing, I mean, it's just safer to go forward through it. So I think that was a great idea, for the noise and for the safety
Safe.
aspect of it.
Thank you. Others wishing to speak during the public hearing with a question or a comment, concern? Adam?
I don't know if you want me to read the letter into the record, but we did receive a letter from an adjoining property owner regarding this request.
I think a number of the concerns were outlined related to the scope of the request, so I don't know if it's necessary to read it. But I think that if commissioners got a chance to read it, we'll certainly keep it attached with the record of.
It will be attached to the minutes, and copies have been provided to the council members as well.
Great.
But I did want to recognize that we did receive that letter, and it was from the owner of the property at 831 4th Street South.
Yes. Yes.
Excuse me, I have another question.
Sure.
I have two. other question. I don't know if it's appropriate, if this is where we should bring it up, but one question is to have people notified in the neighborhood beyond that 100 feet. Other communities, some of them have 300 feet, where a letter is sent out to the neighborhood about, say, upcoming plans, or like the letter we received a month ago.
The legal notice.
Is this where we ask about that change?
That actually would go directly to this, a referral to the, directly to the city council. As I understand, it's a requirement that is set forth in our code, and Adam could correct me on that. It's defined as the 100-foot, but the change wouldn't be defined, change would be made at the planning commission level, unless I'm mistaken.
Well, currently, basically what we follow is state law, which is where the 100-foot setback, or that 100-foot notification comes from. If it was above and beyond that, the city would have to pass most likely an ordinance that would state that from this point forward, we'll notify at a larger extent, which currently doesn't exist, so that would require the council action. That being said, this is probably too much information, but under the new zoning code, we specifically outline those setbacks. So if the commission wanted to modify that in the future, the commission could make that recommendation as part of the new zoning code. So you have a little more power going forward than you do now.
Thanks for the clarity. So that was the first, you had two, you said?
I
Question?
have one more. There are people working in the neighborhood that cannot attend a 4 o'clock in the afternoon meeting. And they're requesting that we have evening meetings where their vote and interest would be needed to better include more of the concerned people in the area and in the neighborhood, and those that are directly affected. They cannot get away from their jobs at a 4 o'clock meeting to represent their input and feelings.
Sure. Okay, thank you for the comment on that. Yes.
Mr. Mayor, piggyback on what June has to say too, there were a couple other things. And the initial scheduling of the meetings was also a problem because it was right before Christmas. And because the neighborhood 17 years ago had a 2-year, somewhat bitter, I think Tom Rayon will recall that, somewhat bitter relationship with Riverview and problems in the whole plan that they had. There's that uneasiness that June talked about initially. There's that uneasiness, and so when you schedule something right before Christmas and you're going to have the planning commission report, then you're going right to the city council. And we're very lucky that June was the one that stepped in and working with Adam. Adam was very helpful in getting everything changed, so at least we could put some time in between there. That's just something I think that different commissions should note, along with the fact that, yeah, several people at the meeting did talk about the fact they can't get to 4 o'clock meetings.
Sure.
I don't know how you judge the quality of what's a 4 o'clock meeting or a 6 o'clock meeting,
But for sake of consistency, right, our regularly scheduled meetings, but thank you for the comments. Yeah. And for some of the background, I think, we all come kind of a product of the processes. We get to live with whatever previously was decided and some of the challenging debates and discussions that might have been held, so I can certainly appreciate what may have been discussed 17 years ago and how that might be a concern today just for trust and all that good stuff, so thank you. Other comments, concerns? Yes, Chuck?
To speak about, and I can't speak directly for the hospital, but with regards to the expansion and things, that occurred for the parking lots and things, the hospital actually agreed and did sell the properties that they owned in the area north of Sherman and north of Chestnut.
Yes, they
As
did.
part of that, they owned properties, and they said, we're not gonna move, and in fact sold those properties that they owned in there, in those blocks.
Thank you for clarification.
After the pushback, right?
After the agreement, I think in 2003, Chuck was speaking to the commitment item 2A, which was that they sell that property, or remaining properties. Okay, I'm not seeing any other, yes, did you want to respond to anything?
No.
Any other comments related to the public hearing stuff? Did you have anything?
Maybe Joe or Adam can speak. In 1C of the recommendation, I think it's 1B of the recommendation, not quite clear, should that essentially just stop at the end? I mean, that use, talks about, should it just stop after the 2018?
The reason that's in there is because our current code requires a 5-foot setback for all parking areas along the expressway, so basically that's stating that it's allowing the existing condition.
Okay.
Because the parking lots are currently up to or across that, and rather than,
And
basically it's just.
not related to item 5.
No, completely separate. This is basically clarifying that we're not gonna come back a year from now and say you need to move your parking lot back 5 feet. Because by this approval, you can have that in that location.
Okay, that was,
So it's another cleanup item on an existing situation.
thank you, Alan.
Okay. With
Mayor?
that, yes.
I'm just gonna say something,
Yeah.
I think you've heard it, I guess, if from a few people here, but the concern of theirs is, I think, over the years, you've heard here is the continuing every 5 or 10 years coming back to do something more. And it's amazing to me of a company that size doesn't have a 5 or a 10-year or something plan that they could tell these neighbors of what the plan is. Instead of just coming down and here's something new. 2003, I was not here. 2007, I was. 2013, I was. Now I'm here again. These people were here for all of it. Ken was. It's, here these things were, and are. It's just amazing that I just can't believe that this thing drops out of the sky. The parking lot's as big as the hospital, the footprint. Probably bigger when you take all the parking lot in. Both sides of the street. And I agree with, we want the state-of-the-art, the best hospital we can have in the city here, so we can, be very proud of it, and that people here can get the services that they need when they need it. So it is, but it's just, and I think the fear is, what's next? 5 years, are we gonna be sitting here again? In 4 years, 4.5 years, somebody may put up a for sale sign because they have to move, they're elderly or whatever it is, that, and they may have a buyer, and all of a sudden, something else is gonna happen. So, I just, it's just continuing things that go on, and it just keeps creeping and creeping. Not saying with this, but the things that just keep, it just keeps coming up every so often, and it's all the time affecting this neighborhood. And I get, that's all. I just wanted to say that, I've been around for 3 of these 4 dates, so that's all.
Sure. Thank you very much. Yes.
And I totally agree, and I think the rest do with Tom, as we have been kept from getting information that we've wanted over the years. And at the hospital meeting last week, I asked directly, being as we're in phase 2, what is phase 3? And I was told directly that there is no plan on phase 3. And like Tom said, for an organization of this size, if they don't have a plan going into the future, they're very unlike other organizations of that size that are futuristic and looking at the big picture.
Sure.
And that's all the information that we have been given. And our recommendation for most of the neighbors as a group that I've talked to is that the hospital look at the big picture and what their needs would be 5, 10, 15, 20 years from now. And maybe they can't be met in the current location without going so far up or so far towards Grand Avenue that there would be a lot of disappointed people.
Sure. Thank you.
One thing they're going to need is a helicopter pad. Where are they going to put that,
Fortunately, they've been able to use the airport, and hopefully, for the foreseeable future anyway, they'll continue to use that. But that's another concern. I think it's a question of ours, I think, as we go forward too. So I would consider that out of order, given the sense that it's not part of the request. But
I'm
thank
sorry.
you for the. Nope, you're fine. I just don't want to go down that path of too much scope
Phase
creep
3.
of the what ifs, because I have some what ifs in my head that I wouldn't want to go there either. So. But thank you for the comments. So with that, I will close the public hearing at 4:45 p.m. unless there's anyone else wishing to speak at the public hearing. So thank you for the comments. And a lot of them go, I think, along the way of trust. And I think since there's a new owner of the hospital, my hope is that they can hear you, and by your attendance at the neighborhood meeting, that they'll take that to heart to continue to communicate and share their plans. And we certainly expect that of them as the city, but as neighboring parcel and property owners yourselves, I think. I hope that they consider that very strongly. So, okay, move on to item number 4, action on Plan 171010, Aspire Riverview Hospital Association Plan Unit Development within the R2 1-family and 2-family residential district. The item was postponed at the December 11th meeting. Commissioners, we've now heard concerns on the public hearing. Adam, you also outline some of the conditions. Is there anything you'd like further to say, Adam, before we go to commissioner comments or concerns?
No, obviously we can modify conditions as you see fit based on the discussion, but I would still stand by the 7 conditions recommended.
Okay, I'll open up commissioners'
I do
comments.
think it would be prudent to address Alderperson Kellogg's concern of the noise violation. I think at a minimum we should put about shutting that off. I don't know that it's appropriate to go as far to require it be a drive-through, but I think personally at a minimum I agree with the sound concerns in the neighborhood.
What is our current noise ordinance? What time? Is it 10 or 11 p.m.?
I believe it's 7 a.m. to,
For
it's either 10 or
construction?
11 p.m. for construction. But yeah, even if,
I'm just thinking if there was a consistency, if we were to identify the noise ordinance and make it consistent with the.
Well, I would suggest, given that it is an emergency vehicle, and I think they are exempt from our noise ordinance, I would suggest, make a motion to approve Plan 17-0110, Aspires Riverview Association Plan Unit Development within the R2 1 and 2 Family Residential District with the attached 7 conditions recommended by staff, and that accommodations will be made so that ambulances will not sound a horn or alarm when entering the garage. This would allow either design for a pass-through entry, or if it can be accommodated by turning off the alarm. But I guess the effort is to make sure that the unnecessary horns would not disturb the neighboring residential properties.
I'll second that.
Motion by Joe Terry and second by Fran Aaron to approve the request with the accommodation related to the entrance to the garage and any unnecessary noise. I'll move it into discussion now, commissioners. Any further discussion, concerns related to that? Personally, it addresses my concern. I think that's the regular ongoing concern that people will have with disruption related to the specific request with the construction of the ambulance garage. Chuck, did you have a?
Can I have a question, Joe? Are you gonna put a time limit, a nighttime limit on that, or during the day too?
My motion is that the ambulances would not sound a horn or alarm when entering the garage, so that regardless of the time of day.
When entering the garage, is that what,
Correct.
Are there any concerns by the applicant of the proposed motion on the floor? I guess I would just open it up.
No, I don't have any concerns. Doug, if you would.
I don't see that entering the garage.
Yes, ma'am.
Does the sound that you're referring to in that statement include the beep, beep, beep backing up sound?
Correct, that's
then?
primary.
You said alarm, and I wasn't sure
Right.
if that included.
So I'm not,
that.
my recommendation, I'm not so concerned about, an emergency vehicle leaving the garage because they may have to sound the sirens to respond accordingly. But at the end of that shift or the end of that, event, when returning back to the garage, that shouldn't be an emergency endeavor. And if they can accommodate that by either doing a drive-through design as was suggested, or simply have a way to turn the backup alarm off so they could back in without disturbing the neighborhood, I think it would accommodate at least the concerns expressed.
I think so too.
And they told us it was a transport only.
Right.
They weren't,
Right.
they weren't going out for emergencies.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct, yeah, they're not responding to calls, that's correct.
June has.
Yes.
That's what I was trying to mention too, that I read. That's-
Yes.
May I ask one more question? I don't know if it's appropriate or not, but concerning the noise, right now there's a problem of moving the snow onto the green area at night. And the trucks that are picking up the snow on the hospital property are dumping it onto the green area, so they are backing up with a beep, beep, beep. And plus, after they dump the snow, that back piece of metal bangs against the truck. There's just a lot of noise at night after a snow from the hospital clearing their property and putting the snow onto the green area.
Yeah, and I think it's a concern. Certainly, I would consider it as part of the concern here. We wouldn't necessarily address it. I don't think it was a condition. I think it would be a communication from the
Okay.
city
Thank you.
to that effect or conversation.
Sorry,
Yeah, no, thank you.
okay.
No,
All
thank
right.
you for the concern. Any further concerns, commissioners? All right. We have a motion and a second to, Joe, if you just want to read your motion one more time.
Sure. Motion by Terry, second by Aaron, to approve Plan 17-1010, Spirus Riverview Hospital Association, Plan Unit Development within the R2 1-family and 2-family residential district, with the attached 7 conditions recommended by staff for approval, and that accommodations will be made so that ambulances will not sound a horn or alarm when entering the garage.
Right. Moving to a vote. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. Okay, well, that takes care of that item, two-part item, I should say. We're going to move on to item number 5. So feel free to excuse yourselves if you'd like to do so. Now would be an okay time. Unless you want to sit through some really riveting zoning discussion. We appreciate company, for these public meetings, so thank you all.
Thank you. Here.
Thank you.
So I knew at the hospital, I was gonna come over and say hi to you. We'll be down out of there. Good, good, pretty good.
Let somebody else take this. Here, grab my hand.
All right. Thank you.
All right. Item number 5 on our agenda is a review of communication from the Village of Port Edwards regarding their official zoning map.
So I received this letter, which is required basically by state law when a community is doing a substantial amendment to their official zoning map, that they have to notify adjacent communities. So we received this. The Plan Commission being in charge of our zoning map and our zoning code, I felt it was appropriate to put on your agenda just so that you had the opportunity to review it. And then if there are any concerns or comments that you would like me to direct back to the Village of Port Edwards, I will do so. That being said, in looking at the current zoning map versus the proposed zoning map and how it directly affects the city of Wisconsin Rapids, I didn't personally have any concerns. Obviously, we have a member of the commission who has a much longer experience with the Village of Port Edwards, so if there's any history you're looking for, he may be able to provide that, but for the most part, it's just a procedural thing that I wanted to make sure you were aware of.
In my review of it, it's simply an update that brings the map up to date with the number of activities that have happened over the last several years. So it doesn't look to me like there's really anything new proposed. Everything that's on there has been proposed and approved, so looks like housekeeping.
So, and I'm sure, the village can zone whatever they want, however they want. I was a little concerned as far as the property on Town Line and Highway 13. It used to be a Gill property, now it's a Dahlman property. I see it's zoned commercial.
It's been zoned that way for probably 12 to 15 years.
Okay.
The Gill family, in an effort to potentially sell it as a commercial use property, made that request. I think it was in the early 2000s, and it was granted.
Okay. All of the water, sewer stuff, is that processed through Port Edwards?
The only water-
development with the...
No, the water and sewer service in Port Edwards is limited to kind of north and west of the river. Nothing to the east of the river is serviced by public.
Okay, so
sewage.
it's all private.
I guess what was the change that they made again?
There's not a specific change called out. What Joe is getting at is basically over the years, their official zoning map has not necessarily been routinely updated or put on a new base map. This basically cleans it up and reflects all the changes that have happened over the
So
last.
there's no thorough review. I mean, there's obviously a lot of, in looking at it just from a outside set of eyes, non-resident set of eyes, I guess I would, if they're gonna go through the process, why wouldn't they maybe make some further substantial updates?
Right.
But, so it's not a comprehensive update to the zoning map.
Get classified as housekeeping more than anything else.
Okay. That was my
And
only
so there's no
question.
action necessary from the commission, it's more of an FYI. If you are up late at night and you notice something, and you would like me to pass it along, please let me know.
All right, that leaves us with our last item on the agenda tonight, which is adjournment, which is number
Actually, just real quick, if you don't mind,
Yeah.
it's not on the agenda, but the city council is going to be hosting a committee of the whole on Monday, the 15th, a week from today, and that is to do a comprehensive review of the draft of the zoning ordinance that the commission has been diligently working on for the last 18 to 24 months. So if you are interested in attending that, I will probably publish it as a special council meeting, so that if a majority of you show up, that it would basically be a meeting of the commission. If you want to provide any background or information to the council as they're discussing it. Obviously, I will be there in attendance, as will the mayor, I believe, and Todd. So if there are specific questions, we should be able to handle them. But if you are interested in sitting through that discussion and providing any background to questions the council may have, by all means, you can attend that meeting.
Is it required to have more people there from the commission to have it be a quorum or whatever, or if?
I don't expect that you would need to take any action
Okay.
there. It's more of a, I guess. to speak
Cautionary in
for
case
cautionary,
there's
yeah.
a quorum of commission members there.
Because if 4 of you were there, it would qualify as a meeting, and I just don't want to run into,
And the 3 of us would be there already.
Yep.
Most likely.
so I just don't want to run into any open meeting violations.
Speaking of Washington on 48th Street, what is,
Oh, that was what we approved earlier.
Okay.
Yeah, that was
All right.
already disposed of, yeah, that was the item he was talking about, yeah.
all right,
I guess as a procedural question for Monday night, or Tuesday 16th, right?
That's
Monday night, that's right. For that committee of the whole, will there be presentation by Civitech walking us through the majority of it, or what's the format?
He's gonna do, I guess, an overview presentation, so it's not gonna be taking it page by page, chapter by chapter, but highlighting some of the major changes and kind of the larger policy decisions.
What time is that?
5 p.m.
I mean, if nothing else, it'd be good to hear from a commissioner or two, just the, if there's a debate or a question about, I mean, we've had some discussions about some aspects of it in case there's concerns. I don't know how council members, if they'll have made it through the first third or first half or all of it, or what level of it at that stage, but, I guess if you want to show some moral support or.
I can be there for
Just to
Suffer through it, but
just to mention that it's been a process of pure bliss, but nevertheless, a very important step to get through it. Okay, all right. I entertain a motion to adjourn. Second. Motion by Burkhart, second by Tao. All in favor?
Aye.
We stand adjourned. Thank you.